introduce our speaker. Lance is one of my favorite people in our community because his voice is so clear. It's different. Some of the things that he shares with us, he presents to us in a slightly different way than maybe we've heard those before. But I don't know if you guys have the same feeling that I do. It's like when we hear that stuff, it's like, oh, now I get it. That makes sense. And he's doing a healing voice version of the Bible, which he's got online. He'll tell you about that in just a second. That's one of the places that I go to just to kind of inspire contemplative type thinking. It's really just I wouldn't necessarily call it a reinterpretation. You can talk a little bit about that. So without further ado, please welcome Lance Howard. Oh, and one other thing, come on up. One other thing that I will share, we have talked to Lance about doing a co-fundraising event. We're thinking about doing that sometime in the winter. I got to go to his office, which if you don't know is at the Middle Way Cafe. Everybody that works there, it's also part of his staff. I went up looking for something and they're like, "You're at Lance's table, right?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And they said, "We'll bring it to you." And I'm like, well, okay. So with that, Lance, the floor is yours. Thank you for coming and being here.
Thanks for that introduction. It's nice to be here again, and I really enjoy the energy in this room. I just had a mushroom coffee, and I just feel really, really good. Like I'm very alert and happy. My talk today is power over fear and death. And the questions are, where do fear and death come from, and what are we so afraid of? And this time of year, you know, the costumes and the jack-o'-lanterns and ghosts and ghouls and skeletons and
Pirates,
sure. Death, you know, there's this underlying tone there, you know, and fear has something to do with it, which also brings about some kind of excitement as well, you know. So I wanted to briefly talk about the meaning and history of Halloween. Approximately 2,000 years ago, October 31st became the day to celebrate the end of the harvest season and the Celtic New Year, and it was called Samhain, which means summer's end in Gaelic. It was considered a magical time between years when the ghosts of the dead walked the earth, and at this time the veil between death and life was supposed to be its thinnest. Some say huge bonfires were lit to drive dead spirits back to the spirit world, but others say fires were to invite the spirits. In the 7th century, as the Catholic Church's influence grew, it merged the ritual of Samhain with All Saints' Day on November 1st, as both holidays have to do with the afterlife. All Saints' Day was then known as Hallow Mass, roughly translated as Mass of the Saints, a time to remember the dead, including martyrs and saints and the faithful departed Christians. October 31st, the night before Hallow Mass, was called All Hallows Eve. We know it today as Halloween, a holiday to celebrate ghouls, which is an evil spirit that robs graves to feed on dead bodies. Demons, an evil spirit that possesses a person or acts as a tormentor. And ghosts, an apparition or nebulous image of a dead person that manifests to the living. And then, of course, all of that is under the umbrella of death. So, Legion, for we are many. There's an ancient story about a time when the man we know of today as being named Jesus encountered a man who was possessed by many demons. And the story goes something like this, that he came to the other side of this sea, and he got out of this boat, and there was a man from the tombs with a demonic spirit that met him, and the man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him. They couldn't shackle him, not even with chains, for he had often been bound with shackles for the feet and with chains, but he would tear the chains apart and would break the shackles into pieces. No one was strong enough to subdue and tame him. Night and day he was constantly screaming and shrieking among the tombs and on the mountains and cutting himself with sharp stones. Seeing Jesus from a distance, he ran up and bowed down and paid homage to him and screamed with a loud voice, saying, "What business do we have in common with each other, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you, don't torment me." Jesus had been saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit. What is your name?" And the spirit yelled, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he began begging him repeatedly not to send them out of the region. For there was a large herd of pigs grazing there on the mountainside, and the demons begged him, saying, "Send us to the pigs, so that we may go into them." And Jesus gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out of the man, entered the pigs, and the whole herd, numbering over 2,000, rushed down the steep bank of the sea, and were drowned in the sea. Now, when the herdsmen heard, they had a big problem, right? They reported in the city and throughout the countryside. And the people came to see what had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the man who had been demon-possessed sitting down and clothed and in his right mind, the man who previously had the legion of demons. And they were frightened. And those who had seen it described it in detail to the people and told them about the pigs. So the people began to beg Jesus to leave their region. I find it interesting that the demonic spirit was asking not to be sent out of the region, but the people asked Jesus to leave the region.
That's pretty tough for somebody that invented salt pork.
With barbecue sauce.
So they preferred that the demonic spirit be left, and obviously there was some monetary value involved with the pigs, right? Their food, their resource. But they wanted the healer to get out of there. Ghouls, demons, and ghosts are entities that feed on the habitual, low, energetic frequency of individual and collective human consciousness. If you consistently or habitually hold the right vibration for an entity, that entity can move into your life. Fear may open the doorway to evil, but love opens the doorway to the true self.
I want to know, if you finished that story, what did Jesus say to the group? And what happened in that scenario with Jesus?
You know, he did leave.
He did.
But he told the man who was now well to share the story. So though he left, the story was passed along in the narrative. This is a chart based on Dr. David Hawkins' map of consciousness. And his research says that an individual vibrating at 700, which would be right here, 700 says awareness. And on this side, it says, I am presence. And you can see that at about here, this side says love, and below it says fear. So in fear, we experience all these levels of consciousness or feelings, right? And in love, we have these feelings that go to full consciousness and start at acceptance. And yeah, acceptance is there. But in fear, we've got things like pride and anger and desire, grief, apathy, guilt, shame, and death being the lowest vibration.
Where did you get that chart from?
Oh, where did I find the chart? I'm not totally sure, to be honest. It has the name here, but I can't read it. So the sources cited, it says David R. Hawkins, made by John Merca.
Okay, let's get over this. So
an individual vibrating at 700 counterbalances the negativity of 70 million individuals below a level of 200. 200 is here, and it just says courage. 70 million people below 200 are counterbalanced by one individual vibrating at 700, which is awareness. It goes on to say an individual vibrating at 500 counterbalances the negativity of 750,000 below 200. An individual vibrating at 300 counterbalances negativity of 90,000 below 200. The thing about the story is that there was so much fear for the people. The one person that wasn't afraid had the capacity to handle the situation and bring healing, but because of their fear, he wasn't welcome to stay. Where do fear and death come from? This is going to be my translation of Genesis 3, verses 1 through 8. And you'll get to see both. Like, the top one is the typical translation, and then the one underneath is still verse 1, but it's my THV translation. So verse 1 says, "Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, yeah, has God said you shall not eat of every tree of the garden?" Okay, so the way I translated it is, the serpent, the enchanter of humankind, the whisperer of spells, the aspect of a person's mind that winds around itself, becoming self-involved, greedy, or selfish, that creates false beliefs, lies, and false personalities based on the loss of or unawareness of true identity. The serpent, devil, Satan, was more cunning, crafty, and sneaky than any of the wild creatures of the field that the great I Am had made. And the serpent said to the woman, the part of the human self that is curious, creative, and desiring new experiences, "Furthermore, did the great one say, you shall not partake from all the trees of the garden enclosure?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden." THV version, the woman, she said to the serpent, "We may partake of the fruit," the knowledge, the results, and the consequences of the trees of the garden enclosure. But, I'm just going to skip to the THV version of verse 3. "But of the fruit of the tree which is in the center of the garden enclosure, the great one has said, you shall not partake of it, nor should you touch it unless you die." Verse 4, "And the serpent, the arrogant, ego-wound aspect of her mind, said to the woman, you will not die. The great one knows that as soon as you partake of the tree, your eyes, your mental and spiritual faculties will be opened, no longer limited, able to see things which otherwise are hidden from the eyes of mortals. You will be divine ones, knowing that which is good, pleasant, and agreeable for life, and that which is evil, unfortunate, and ill-suited for life. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for eating, and that it was desirable to the eyes, and precious to make one intelligent and successful, she took the fruit thereof and ate, and gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. And their eyes were opened, and they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together, and girded their loins. In and through the wind of the day, they perceived the sound of the great I Am coming through the enclosed and so protected garden. So the man and his partner woman hid themselves, turning away from, closing the mind to the face and presence of the I Am, to the other trees, the other thoughts, to distract them from the presence. They thought they could ignore the voice of the one by occupying themselves with other parts, thoughts, and actions of the self. So at verse 5, the serpent, which is your very own ego, will always twist the truth. Knowing good and evil is more than logical knowledge. It is the experience of good and evil. Sure, you will gain more knowledge, but you will also gain the curses that come with the necessity of experience in the three-dimensional world. And this is what the serpent doesn't say, right? It's like, sure, You will know good and evil, but leaves out the fact that knowing good and evil comes with these consequences. Verse 6, godlike status is always the purpose of the serpent ego. All ideas of intelligence, being smart, or successful all have this underlying tone of self-importance and arrogance. These are all efforts to increase one's appearance and standing according to the ways of this world system. Verse 7, their eyes were opened, meaning that what was once unknown was now staring them in the face. The awareness of their nakedness is the revelation of their vulnerability. Literally, their ignorance was bliss, because this revelation brings fear, and the sewing of fig leaves for clothing is a lousy attempt to cover their shame. To this day, we are still wearing masks in our daily lives with the pretense of strength and uprightness. Man. Okay, so Adam is supposed to represent man, and it means the divine masculine of consciousness, and woman represents the divine feminine of awareness. The two of them together make up the psyche of the human mind and the human experience, the unity of consciousness and awareness. These two each have very unique purpose and characteristics, okay, the man and the woman. Consciousness and awareness. When awareness partakes of the fruit of the tree in this story, when awareness partakes, consciousness has no other option. The knowledge, the results, and the consequences are in full effect. Fear and death are close relatives born from the influence of the ego, or the ancient serpent, that plagues our mentality. Death is a multi-dimensional experience of the body and the mind. Fear precedes death. This deadly state of mind is the real problem. We do not know the truth of identity. When we do not know the truth of identity, we have already died. This is the mental aspect of death. Lack of self-knowledge begets fear, which leads to self-hate. And it's very under the radar, this self-hate. As soon as we experience fear, even if expressed as self-doubt or self-ignorance, we have already entered death. Destruction is the final result of that, and it plays out over time, right? It's not an immediate destruction, but the results are there. And this is what the story of Adam and Eve reveals. Lucky for us, there is one force that is more powerful than fear and death. So, quickly here, I'm just going to read these two verses. That the Lord God said unto the serpent, because you've done this, you are cursed above all cattle and every beast of the field. Upon your belly you will go, and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity or hatred between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. It will bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Okay. So, this is the same thing, but this is how I translated it. The great I am spoke to the serpent, the enchanter of humankind, the whisperer of spells, the aspect of a person's mind that winds around itself, becoming self-involved, greedy, or selfish, that creates false beliefs, lies, and false personalities based in a loss of or unawareness of true identity. Because you have done this, you are cursed, covered and hidden like a mystery that gives humans the opportunity to find the deep place within where they are not affected by your insults, persecution, and lies. Humans will be able to realize their greatest strength because of you, above the other beasts and living things of the field, the psyche of the human soul. So, the other beasts and things of the living field is a way of saying the psyche of the human soul. It's about the internal environment, where all the wild aspects of personality exist, have support, and are to be discovered. You will move about on your belly. For all of your existence, you will eat nothing but dirt. This is no promise. There is no promise of self-empowerment or satisfaction in you. This is talking to the serpent, right? This is what the serpent is trying to offer us, but can never give. Only the illusion of self-empowerment and satisfaction through your deceptive words. There will be a continual war between you, the part of the human self that enchants and whispers with deceptive narratives, and woman, the part of the human self that is curious, creative, and desiring new experiences. Between your naturally occurring results and offspring, and her naturally occurring results and offspring. Hers shall lie in wait for your head, and you shall lie in wait for its heel. It shall endeavor to crush your head, and you will endeavor to attack its heel. The Genesis story that typically is taken very literally reveals so much about the human experience and what we're up against and why fear and death are part of our experience. The picture we're being given is that the serpent will go on forever taunting new expressions or children of Eve. Remember, Eve is the female aspect of what it is to be human. The curiosity, the creativity, the awareness. Eve will have literal children and metaphysical children, since she is a representation of the mother, sacred feminine, within all, just as she represents the beginning of the human bloodline. The personal application is found in the quantum metaphysical. The war between the serpent and the woman is a portrayal of the human struggle to decipher what is real or what is true from what is fiction or what is false, what are lies. The serpent is the originator of the false narratives, which humans must be aware of as the messaging from their own lower nature. The war between the serpent's naturally occurring results and offspring, these mean thought suggestions that create false identity and personality, and her naturally occurring results, meaning thought suggestions that lead to realization of true identity and true purpose. That's how the ego's deceptive suggestions are the path by which woman comes to realize what is true. I'm using the word woman, but it's within all of us, right? This war is how we awaken to the truth. There is no other way. It is an ongoing battle that will frustrate woman until she awakens to the game that is being played. This reflects what a man named Paul wrote about all things working together for good. No matter how dark, no matter how scary or horrifying it may seem in this earthly experience, it can all work together for good. And that's how we stay on those top vibrations, right? Just an awareness, like, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I do believe it can all work together for good. The serpent and the woman will constantly be at war because it is her natural tendency to experience new things. And it is the serpent's natural position to draw that tendency towards selfishness and the illusion of past and future, as well as material desires. Nonetheless, the serpent is the weaker of the two, and as the one who can only strike at the lower parts of the human, right? The verbiage we were given was, you will try to strike at the heel, right? Down here at the bottom. The easiest place for us to apply force to harm, right? It's like, let's crush the serpent. This is easy for us. But there's the fear, right? I remember when I was a teenager, a friend of mine had a pet snake, and I'd never seen a snake move across carpet before, and it freaked me out. Just this slithering motion, and it doesn't appear like this creature should be able to move forward in this, yeah, it's very strange. And in that moment, fear caught me, and I completely forget. I'm actually the one with the power here, right? I stand tall, and I can apply force. Dying, metaphysically speaking, letting go of the need for control is what you are here to do. But the ego, the serpent whispers, you can get all the control. and then you'll be a divine one. The ego resists through fear, causing us to cling to this three-dimensional expression of life, a very limited experience. The clinging is the source of our fear and the experience of death. So, death, where is your sting? I would just quickly like to say that I work on this project called Bible Redefined, and I do a translation of the Bible, and by studying the ancient languages, the ancient Semitic languages, I've come to realize how quantum science and spirituality come together. It's in the languages. It's not in English. So when we translate an ancient Semitic book into English, we lose all of that power. And it becomes a religion. It becomes something that's far more logical, and A plus B is supposed to equal C, but then there's a lot of other things that kind of get left out, or there are other parts of the equation that we can just totally miss, like understanding that Adam and Eve and the serpent are parts of the human psyche. You totally miss that if you don't know the ancient language.
So we got the serpent that is the ego, we've got the divine feminine energy, and say a little bit more about what aspect of that is and the battle that the divine feminine is doing with the ego, if I'm hearing that right?
Okay, so Adam is consciousness, and consciousness is like saying stillness. There's a certain emptiness to Adam, just being okay right here and right now. Consciousness. But awareness is curious and creative, wants to do and wants to touch and experience. That's where the serpent gets in. The serpent says, oh, you want to experience, right? Well, let's try this. And if we don't know who we are, we will follow every suggestion of the serpent, every suggestion of our own arrogance, our own ego. And that's where fear gets into, Somehow, it's interesting why or how we would allow, I'm not quite sure how to bring this together. How is it that our concern and our anxiety becomes a source of empowerment? It's like, if I can think ahead and go, you know what, I'm afraid right now of a certain thing, so let me follow that trail because it's actually going to somehow make me better. How does the serpent trick us into that is the question here, right? Eve was concerned that she was missing out on the knowledge of good and evil. It didn't work out for her, right? And it never works out for her. It never will work out for her. She didn't know, or somehow she was missing the fact that she was already a divine one, and believed that somehow this anxiety would lead her to understanding more about her divinity.
I was going to ask, so what is the practical application of this awareness? Like, we're hearing all the things which we should not do, but what is it exactly that puts us in alignment with spirit so that we do not go in the direction of that fear? Is it that we shouldn't even, as gods, we shouldn't even bother to ask about what horrible, good, evil things can happen? We are all that is good, so now, we're not concerned with all the bad things because we surpassed them.
Right.
Is that correct? Or, because that is the training that is needed, is to a practical, quick, fast, in a hurry, like you're talking to a stranger on the street who's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You're like, but you are the source of all things, and so you do not need to concern yourself with any of those things type thing, right? As opposed to this, which is very cerebral and makes you go down
Yeah.
And then the other thing would be the Kundalini experience, the rising of the serpent within. That's the way we describe it in the Western world. I'm not sure if that's accurate
Right.
in the Eastern philosophy.
Right.
But what would you do with that? I mean, the serpent rising from within, the Holy,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Okay, so just very quickly, I will say that since the serpent is part of our psyche, there is a level of acceptance that we must come to grips with. It's not that we're trying to ban the serpent, it's just that we are stepping into our own power and not letting the serpent lead us, right? We are our conscious awareness, or our Adam and Eve within. That's the leadership. The serpent is not to lead. So I don't have a lot to say right now about the Kundalini rising, but it does remind me that there is a certain embracing and accepting of the serpent that does put us in a place of power. Okay, did you have a question still?
I was curious about your retranslation project. Are you doing this in cooperation with a group of others? And I'm fascinated by it.
I do have some people that I've known for a very long time who also know some of the language that I'm in communication with, and will often, as I'm working, shoot these documents to them for revision and things like that. Yes.
And of course, this will be another talk, but I'm also fascinated how you came to, through your study of the language, to kind of a Jungian archetype understanding of the
Yeah.
scripture. That's
It's definitely there. It's definitely there. Yes, thank you for that. That is another talk, and I would love to talk about it.
Yes.
Okay.
The THV?
Yes.
Is that like a version that,
That's the version that I do.
okay, all
The
right.
very first page, and I think on some of these at the bottom, you've seen THV-TV.com.
Okay,
That's the website
okay.
where you can find everything. Okay, now I say this, believers, and I'm calling you believers. You are the ones who are thinking outside of this culture's norms, or the box of what this life is about and what we're trying to do, right? Flesh and blood cannot inherit nor be part of the kingdom of God, nor does the perishable inherit the imperishable. Listen very carefully. I tell you a secret truth decreed by God and previously hidden, but now revealed. We will not all sleep in death, but will be all completely changed, wondrously transformed, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the sound of the last trumpet call. For a trumpet will sound, and the dead who believe will be raised imperishable and will be completely changed, wondrously transformed. I just want to say something about the archetype of the man that we now call Christ. When we read earlier that the seed of the serpent would be at war with the seed of Eve, that is a reference to the archetype of Christ that is within every person. Your belief and understanding in the great I am in you, you must connect to it. You absolutely must connect to it for this to become your experience. It is the reality of things, but can you connect to it is the question. Okay? So, 53. For this perishable part of us must put on the imperishable nature, and this mortal part of us that is capable of dying must put on immortality, which is freedom from death. And when this perishable puts on the imperishable and this mortal puts on immortality, then the scripture will be fulfilled that says, death is swallowed up in victory. It is vanquished forever. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin by which it brings death is the law. Okay, so just to try to break that down really quickly, the word sin means nothing more than mistakenness, which started with Eve's mistake, right? She gave up her power. She handed it over by listening to the voice of the serpent. That's the mistake. That's how death begins. And this is the law of life. It's that simple. It's not some religious law, okay? It's just the natural consequences of living in these bodies on this planet. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory as conquerors through our Lord Jesus Christ. Translation here, there's a lot of different ways to go at it. Lord, I would instantly say the great I am. Jesus is from a Hebrew name, which is Yeshaya, and it points to the word salvation, and it simply means freedom and victory and prosperity and abundance. And Christ is the anointed one, or the anointed seed. Again, we've been referring to the seed already, which is within us. So again, it just points to conscious awareness, the very core of what it means to be human and to step into that true identity. That is what these three words are pointing to. The archetype of the I am, it is awake and it is live and it is physical in you and in me. And so this person, this name that today we call Jesus, it's a long story about this name. The letter J it came into the English language in the 1500s. It has nothing to do with this Hebrew man who lived thousands and thousands of years ago. So that's a totally different discussion, but the I amness still belongs to that person too, if you catch my drift. So I'm not trying to write off this person as, I don't know, I'm not trying to write off anyone. I'm just saying it's in everyone. And this person who freed the man from those demons, that story that we read at the beginning, was a real person with real power. You're a real person with real power too, so just get after it.
And so it is.
Yeah. Okay. The last translation that we read was the Amplified translation. It is not my work. This one is also Amplified translation. It is not my work. I just wanted to show you these references about life and death. Okay? When I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead, and he placed his right hand on me and said, "Do not be afraid, I am the first and the last, and the ever-living one, living in and beyond all time and space. I died, but see, I am alive. Furthermore, I have the keys of absolute control and victory over death, and of Hades, the realm of the dead. So write the things which you have seen in the vision, and the things which are now happening, and the things which will take place after these things." Does anyone here have a clue? Okay. There's a lot I want to say about this, but I'm keeping an eye on the clock.
You're good.
I'll just say, you accessing your I amness leads to this type of experience, where you come face to face with the great I am. And you realize that the first and the last, this is an I am statement. It's very, we can just skip right over it in English and not realize, oh, that's a reference to the I am. I am. In the Semitic languages, it's like, imagine there's a set of parentheses between am and the, and is there. I am is the first and the last. This ever-living one who is dead but is alive and has the keys of absolute control and victory over death. I'm hoping someone here has maybe had this experience and knows that this I am is within you. You've connected to this before. And if you haven't, there is a way. I will talk to you more about that in just a second. There is no reason to fear. We can't stop the physical body from dying, but the great I am, when you connect to that, you realize I am that, and that is the first and the last. That lives forever. Okay, another example. This is my THV translation. I titled it, "Peter Knows I Am." Okay, who do people say I The true I, the child of humanity, the descendant of Adam, the primordial human being, am. Who do people say I, the child of primordial I amness, am or is? This is very hard to translate. They answered, some say you are John, the immerser. Others say you are Elijah. And others say you are Jeremiah or one of the prophets, those who speak divine messages and interpret the divine will under inspiration of the sacred word. Verse 15, but who do you say that I am? Who do you say the true I is? He asked. Simon Peter, meaning hear, listen to, and understand the rock, answered, you are the anointed one, the child or expression of the living, quickening, higher power, the great I am. I is the anointed one, the progeny of the one true self. You are the anointed one. And there's that example. You are is the anointed one. It's full of archetypal language here. Yeshaya, that's the Hebrew for what we now say Jesus, okay? Replied, fortune and happiness belong to you. You are well off, right on the mark, level, prosperous, stable, strong, and guided, Simon, son of Jonah, because this was not made clear to you by anything in this physical existence of some kind of logical reasoning, but by the parent of the universe. Let me ask a question. It's very simple. The question is, who is sitting in your chair? What is your answer?
I am.
Who do you say I? The I is. And Simon answered, you are the anointed one. You are the child of the living, quickening, higher power, the great I am. The progeny of the one true self. You are is the anointed one. And I am telling you something important. You are Peter, meaning rock, and on this rock, the truth that you have spoken, I, the great anointed one, can and will confirm and construct the community of those who are called, divinely summoned and invited. The door of Hades, the world, or the matrix, and the mindset of death, darkness, and obscurity will not overpower them. And I will give you the keys of the fully formed extension of power. The very thing that you're looking for, the very thing we're looking for, the very thing the serpent is trying to tempt us with. He's saying, if you will just awaken to who you are, that great I am that you'll find within you will give you the keys to the fully formed extension of power. It is determined, centralized, it is purposeful, it is authoritative, the creative word, it is the empowering vision, it is the counsel that rules by its ability to express the most obvious next step for a group and an individual, right? All the guidance and support that you could ever ask for is there. The quality of rulership and the ruling principles that guide our lives towards sacred unity, the sacred world, realm, or universe of vibration, sound, light, energy that vibrates without limit throughout the entire manifested cosmos, extending from a center that is nowhere and everywhere, vibrating through all of life, constantly reporting that nothing is separate, everything is one. Whatever you figuratively, mentally, and emotionally wind together, bind in knots, knit, tie, or hang on to in physical existence, this three-dimensional world of particle and form, material and visible existence of nature and embodied reality, it will be bound in the multi-dimensional world of empowering and creative vision, vibration, sound, light, and energy. It's just saying, if you make up your mind, it will be done. Nothing will be impossible for you. And whatever you decide to let go of, then that'll be done too. You can release whatever you like, and you can hold on to whatever you like, for better or for worse. That is your power. the serpent does not want you to know this. You know, I think the only thing I can really say to this is cognitive dissonance is a real thing. When we can hardly have a discussion about if white chocolate chips are better than dark chocolate chips in a cookie. All I'm saying is we can become so religious about anything, right? This is just what we're up against.
And that's the clinging.
That's the
That's
clinging.
the clinging.
And that's how we know for sure as human beings, if we find ourselves anxious or just really bound about what we think we believe, then we don't know it as well as we think we do. We're not as sure about it as we think we are. Because if someone disagrees, I should be able to take a deep breath and just be okay. Because I have that peace within me. But if the peace is lacking, something's wrong here. You know, I don't need to fight with them. I just need to look at myself and go, I thought I knew what I knew, but this war I'm having inside now proves that I'm not okay. I'm not as grounded in what I thought I believed. For the religious mind, I would say, if you claim to follow this man, I'm going to say Jesus, if you claim to follow him, and everything he preached was about love and unity, why are you not just following what he said?
So, I am brought to remember a vision that Helen Schuchman had, the writer of the Course of Miracles,
Okay.
where she could have had any revelation that she desired, but all she wanted from the revelation was the single statement, God is. And I think for those of us who are, I came up in a very religious background, it's like we might need, and there's a very short prayer that I've heard where it starts off with, God is, I am, we are. And so it is. And I think that it's helpful for those of us that are raised in that tradition to begin with the thought, God is, I am, and then we are. And that helps us to settle ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That can be very, very helpful. Of course, there are some things in the biblical teachings that would seem to indicate things like judgment, but again, you have to understand it from the ancient Semitic language viewpoint and not from an English viewpoint. That's a different talk for a different day. There are very good reasons for why we read that in English. That the interpretation thereof is not what we've been led to believe. The sentence I am literally translates from the Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic as I, or I exist. This is the true name of God. This name and reality indicates the connection of the personal I to the only divine I am. The connection of small I that you experience as you to the only I that we have called God, or higher power, or creative intelligence, or the one true self. There are so many ways to describe this ultimate beingness. I am is the sacred awareness of the here and now, and a simple presence, a realization of one's divine self and the divine power that comes with it. This leads to the sense of I can, the human's innermost reflection of the one. John 14:12, I say to you, he that believes on me, the works that so Jesus said this, he that believes on me, the works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go to my Father. So, any of the stories of his life and miraculous things he did, he wasn't trying to stand on a pedestal and say, I'm the only one here who can do this. He said, you can do this also, and you can do even greater things. And he quoted this in John 10:34, it's written that Jesus quoted from Psalm 82, verse 6, saying, I have said that you are divine ones, you are God's. In this book, The Identity Process, just a quick snippet from chapter 4 that I thought was important. You truly know yourself when you realize that who you are is independent and free of every person and circumstance in your life. No matter what happens or does not happen, who you are is the foundation from which you cannot be moved. If you think you've been moved from your center, it's just an illusion. Okay? And when fear or doubt presents itself, you remember how to realign with your true self. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies, dedicating all of yourselves, set apart as a living sacrifice, holy and well-pleasing to God, which is your rational act of worship. Don't be conformed to this world any longer with its superficial values and customs, but be transformed and progressively changed as you mature spiritually by the renewing of your mind, focusing on godly values and ethical attitudes so that you may prove for yourself. There it is, right? You don't have to prove for anyone else. There's no need to argue and fight about it. Prove for yourself what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect in His plan and purpose for you. For by the grace of God given to me, I say to every one of you not to think more highly of himself and of his importance and ability than he ought to think, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has apportioned to each degree of faith and a purpose designed for service. I think that's pretty straightforward. Knowing your identity and purpose are tools to overcoming fear and death. You set your mind, you determine your interest and your intention, you learn to calm your thinking, you decide to have faith, and you remain hopeful. Remove things and people from your environment that keep you in a state of discomfort or fear. Begin to see every fear and discomfort as pathways to enlightenment or the experience of the next best version of yourself. Connect your full awareness to love. And just think back to that chart, right? Love is, we're trying to stay in the ranges of love. Anytime, it's this simple. Any negativity, any doubt, any fear, stop the thinking right there. More accurately, I should say, observe the thinking. Okay, it's not always so easy to stop the thinking, but observing the thinking puts you in the driver's seat. It's, oh, that's not a great thought. Where's that coming from? So curiosity puts you back in your power versus not having, the curiosity and just following it, just going with it, which means you've decided to allow the serpent to lead you. Meditation, the awareness of many thoughts. This is by definition. Meditation, by definition, is the awareness of many thoughts. I used the term observe, right? I would like to observe my thoughts instead of getting entangled or overly involved with them. This is a meditative state, seeing all the thoughts come and go. Concentration is the focus on one thought or the unity of thought. We kind of use these words backwards in our culture today. When we say concentrate, we're thinking about how many thoughts we can kind of focus in on, and when we are trying to meditate, we think of something that's more still, but it's actually the opposite. Concentration is bringing us to stillness, or pure mind, pure conscious awareness, meta-mind, meditation, awareness of many thoughts. Medcon, as I say, meditation concentration allows you to release control. So, I'm going to wrap up here, but I would like to tell you that I have a couple videos online for meditation concentration. If you go to the website, you'll be able to find the YouTube channel. But also, I would like to offer a workshop on MedCon. It's talking about various protocols of how to enter into meditation concentration. really knowing that you know step by step how you're doing it and why you're doing it and where it's leading you, and getting, I would say, a little bit more scientific about it. That just means you know when you know you crossed into the other. I guess I would say capital T, capital O, the other, meaning stepping into the realm of your true self. The benefits thereof, mentally and physically, what are the benefits of doing this? The truth of mind control and meditation. How will this allow me to renew my mind, as we read in the one that started with, I urge you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your body and to learn to no longer be conformed to the world, but to be renewed in the mind. We have so many mental habits. You wake up in the morning and you typically feel a certain way every single morning. How do we stop those types of habits that are just so automatic? Can I really change that? It's been decades. You know, I wake up and I feel the same thing every day. Can I change that feeling? Can I let go of what Mom said all those years ago? The truth of mind control meditation. What are we trying to do? We would like to access the secret place that is mentioned in Psalm 91. We would like to access the sacred space that's mentioned in Psalm 24. The kingdom or the queendom of God mentioned in Luke 17. The stillness mentioned in Psalm 46, the green pastures and peaceful streams mentioned in Psalm 23, the place that you are to return to, spoken of in Matthew 3 and 4, the door, as well as the good shepherd mentioned in John chapter 10, Zion mentioned throughout the book of Psalms, the heavenly Jerusalem mentioned in the book of Hebrews chapter 12. What else do we have? The Alpha and Omega mentioned in the book of Revelation. We actually touched on this with the one verse that said, I am the first and the last. And the Garden of Eden. Remember, if Adam and Eve and the serpent are parts of the human psyche, then the garden enclosure is saying that mindset, that mind frame is a place for you. It's here. It's within you. And you can access it. You can go back there to that place where there was no shame, there was no guilt. But beware, the serpent is still there too, and the serpent will always go, hey, what time is it? We should probably get
We gotta get going.
We should probably get out of here.
That reference to the door, you didn't have a reference when you went through it.
Oh, the door is mentioned in John chapter 10. Never fear again. That is the point. Meditation, concentration, overcoming fear and death. Never fear again. Can I live without fear? Can that be? Okay, I'm going to tell you from experience, it's not that I don't encounter fear. It's that when I do, I know right how to stop it, then and there. Fear does not linger. The serpent will not stop. Remember, the war between him and her, it's going to continue. So you will be presented, the presentation of fear will always be around the corner somewhere, but you can stand in your power, realizing that there really is no reason to fear at all. When we fear, life does bring us the consequences. That's partaking of the fruit. The fruit is the consequence. Conversely, when we stay in love and hope and joy and faith, life brings us those reflections as well. If you're interested in the MedCon workshop, I'm thinking of these two dates, which I think is Saturday. This coming Saturday and the Saturday after. It'll take 4 hours, 10 to 12 and 1 to 3 on those days. If you're interested, just come up here and put your name on this for me with either an email or a phone, and also tell me which of the dates you think you would be interested in. And then I'll send out information to you saying either I'll have it on both of those days or just one of them, depending on your interest and what works for you.
Is it via Zoom or in person?
In person, I do believe Zoom is an option as well. It is an option. Yes,
The time periods, is it just one or both on the same day?
it's going to be both on the
Both,
same day.
okay.
So essentially, a lunch break from 12 to 1 in the middle.
How about we give them a lovely,